Okay, so here the Torah says, and as I told you, this is extremely creative. It is certainly not the plain meaning, but it is a remarkable insight. The Torah here is in talking about these various calamities that are going to happen to Jewish people. And by the way, if anybody needs any proof of the Torah, not that we do, just reading the Torah and reading the various calamities that the Torah predicts will happen through Jewish history, and they did happen. So you don't need much more than that. That's quite a prediction, considering what do you call it? You know, that it was written so long ago, and all of a sudden we see through Jewish history it constantly happens. So one of the things that it says is at the bottom of page 1078, it says like this. Now pay attention very carefully. It says, Shorcha tavuach leinecha. Your ox will be slaughtered in front of your eyes. Velo sochal mimenu. You will not be able to eat from it. In other words, the enemies are going to take and slaughter your ox. Chamorcha, your donkey, gozul milfanecha. Your donkey will be stolen from in front before you. Velo yashuv lach, it will not be returned to you. Tzoncha, your cattle, nisunos leoivecha, your sheep. How does he translate? Tzoncha is your sheep or your cattle? Your flock, well, that's the word. Your flock will be given to your enemy. Ve'ein lecha moshia, you have nobody to deliver you. You have nobody to save you. This is a terrible calamity. All these things, page 1078, towards the bottom of the page. All these things are going to happen to you. And your ox is going to be taken, your donkey, your flock, it's all given to the enemy, and nobody's going to be able to stop it, nobody's going to be able to prevent it. That's the plain meaning of the pasuk. One of the Farshim says, let's read this pasuk backwards. Let's read this pasuk backwards. Okay? Moshia lecha. You will have somebody to deliver you. Ve'ein le'oivecha nesunos tzonecha. Ve'ein le'oivecha nesunos. It will not be given to your enemy. Tzoncha, your sheep, lecha yashuv, will be returned to you. Velo milfanecha gozel. It will not be stolen from you. Chamorcha, your donkey, mimenu tochal. You'll be able to consume it. Velo milfanecha gazul chamorcha. And from before you, your donkey will not be stolen. Mimenu tochal, from it you shall eat. Velo leinecha tevach shrecha. Your ox will not be slaughtered in front of your eyes. That means if you read the pasuk backwards, so then everything comes out good. If you read it forwards, everything comes out bad. All right, but we don't read psukim backwards. So why would we even, great, you could read it backwards, but generally we try not to read backwards. So what's the idea here? Commentaries are telling you that here we are in the middle, right in the middle of the tochacha, right in the middle of the rebuke, right in the middle of the predictions of disaster. And the Torah is telling you that as quickly as something negative happens, it could quickly be reversed. That the word, you could be in a terrible situation, and in life, the terrible situation can be reversed instantly. So, obviously, the question is, well, how do you reverse it? The answer is the things are reversed by what do you call it? By doing tshuva and doing the right things, it can be reversed. But the commentaries of the Farshim say that this is just alluding to the idea of how something going in one direction and could quickly reverse directions. And it happens in life all the time. Something looks like it's a disaster, and it could quickly reverse directions. I told you a story about the mother. This lady walks into her daughter's room, and she sees a note on the daughter's bed. 16-year-old daughter says, "Mom, I'm sorry to tell you this." From lady. "I'm sorry to tell you this. I've been seeing an Arab for the last few months. Secretly seeing an Arab. We've decided to elope. We've gotten married, and I'm living in his village now. As far as I'm concerned, I'm willing to keep contact with the family. I know it's going to break your heart, but it's just something I felt I had to do." Then at the bottom of the note says, "P.S. I'm just kidding. I just wanted you to know there are worse things in life than my report card, which you will find in my top desk drawer." I wish I would have thought of this in high school. Then I could tell you. When I heard this story, my first thought was I laughed, and then I thought to myself, Wow, boy, this would have helped me. Oh boy, would this help me, okay. So an hour later, she gets a text message from her father. Your little joke wasn't so funny. Mommy had a heart attack. She's on a respirator. She's in the hospital. If you want to see her, you have to get to the hospital within the hour. Otherwise, it's going to be too late. Then at the bottom, it says, P.S. I'm just joking. I just wanted you to know there are worse things in life than the beating you're going to get when you come home today. Yeah. So sometimes in life, it looks like the situation is just horrific and just a disaster. And the next thing you know, within an instant, it could shift. That's what the Torah is telling you over here. Okay, obviously you can't do that, by the way. You can't frighten your parents. Although if you do, you should pay me royalties. But if you use that strategy. But at the end of the day, the Torah is telling you over here that as quickly as something negative could happen, it's really in our hands in many cases. And I don't mean that it's our physical, as a human ability, but it's within our hands in order to get the situation to be reversed. All it requires is a little cooperation with the Torah and doing tshuva, that sort of thing. Okay, let's go to Parshas Nitzavim now. Page 1086. Okay, this is Moshe Rabbeinu speaking to the Jewish people. And he says to them the following. Atem Nitzavim hayom, you are standing today, kulchem, all of you, lifnei Hashem Elokeichem. All of you stand before Hashem your God. Rosheichem, shivteichem, the heads of your tribes. Zikneichem v'shotreichem, your elders, your enforcers. Kol ish Yisrael, you all stand before God. And one of the things the Mefarshim say is that there's no coincidence that it usually comes out right around the week of Rosh Hashanah. Because Rosh Hashanah is the day Atem Nitzavim Kulchem B'fnei Hashem. We're standing in front of Hashem our God. We're all standing in front of Hashem our God. Now, over here, there's a covenant. This is called, look at the top Rashi. Atem Nitzavim, top Rashi, right column. Melamed, this teaches, Shekinse Moshe lifnei HaKodesh Baruch Hu biyom Moso. Moshe gathered them before HaKodesh Baruch Hu on the day of his death, lehachnisa bivris, to bring them into the covenant. Now, what the Mefarshim speak about over here is, well, the covenant was made already. There's a covenant already between the Jewish people and between God and the Jewish people. What covenant is this? Why is there another covenant that's needed before what do you call it? Before Moshe Rabbeinu, right before he dies. So the Mefarshim explained that we're talking over here what's called bris arvus. There's one covenant which is my responsibility to keep Torah and to keep the laws. That's one type of covenant. That's the first one that they entered at Har Sinai. They entered a covenant, the Jewish people entered a covenant, that we will do what the Torah says. There's another covenant now that they're taking on over here, which is what's called the covenant of collective responsibility. Collective responsibility. And what that means is that we are not only accountable for what we do, we're accountable for those who we could also have an influence on and we didn't. That's very, very tricky. It's very, very tricky because, what could I do if somebody in this room decides to do something wrong? You're right, it's to the degree that you carry responsibility. If you're the leader of the Jewish people, you've got a big responsibility for the entire Jewish people. If you're the head of a family, you've got responsibility for your family. So it's each person relative to who you could or should have possibly exerted an influence on, who you should have prevented from doing things, and so on and so forth. I'm not responsible for guys who go out on Bar Ilan and they start, destroying the train tracks, right? Or vandalizing the train or whatever it is. I'm not responsible. There's nothing I can do about that. I am responsible for my own children, that I set an example in the home of how a Torah Jew should behave. And if my children get the wrong ideas, it's my fault. That I am responsible for. And by the way, generally the influence on other people is not by what you say, it's how you behave. And those who are watching you, those who look up to you, so we have a responsibility to behave a certain way so that these people should be influenced by us. The good news is that the same way that you carry the responsibility for other people who you're responsible for, Gesundheit, if people learn from your positive example, you get credit for that. If people learn from a positive example, so that you actually share in the benefits of what they do. So let's say you go into, let's say you're you come into the yeshiva and you sit down and you start learning, and somebody looks and says, he's learning Torah. I really should learn Torah too. You now share in his Torah. How much? Only God knows exactly what the dividends are exactly. If you put money in a pushka and I say, I didn't give tzedakah today, I should put money in the pushka too, you get credit to a certain extent, you get credit for what I'm doing. You understand? But the same thing when it comes to collective, this is called bris arvus. Bris arvus means that there's collective responsibility. And you have to be very, very careful here, because it doesn't mean going around telling people what to do, because you have to know if you're a person who people are going to listen to. If the Chafetz Chaim would walk into the room and tell me that I really shouldn't be saying what I'm about, that I'm speaking too much Lashon Hara, so that would have an influence on me. If one of the guys in the yeshiva says to me, by the way, you're speaking too much Lashon Hara, that wouldn't affect me, because this guy speaks even more. He's a walking gossip columnist, and he's telling me not to speak Lashon Hara. So you have to know how do people look up to you? Do people accept what you say? Do people expect you to? But there's something called bris arvus. There's collective responsibility. I had a situation once where my son came home from school, and he was about 11 years old. He came home for lunch. So I walk into the house, and my wife says to me, Plony, my son, she said, Plony's upset. I said, why is he upset? Because the principal said that at recess, two of the other kids were playing, two kids took a soccer ball, and they punctured the soccer ball. And until he finds out who it is, the entire class does not get recess. So I said to my son, did you do it? He said, nope. I said, were you involved in it at all? He said, nope. I said, do you know who did it? He said, yes. I said, does the principal want you to tell? He said, no. He wants that the boy should come in and confess. So I called the principal up. I said, why did my son get punished? Why is my son being punished? He said, well, because I have to find out who punctured that soccer ball. I said, do you want my son to tattletale? He said, no, we can't have that sort of thing in the school. I said, then if my son could have stopped the guy using physical force, would that have been allowed or expected? He said, no, we can't have that sort of thing in the school. I said, so essentially you're telling me that my son couldn't have done anything about it, he had nothing to do with it, was not involved, and yet he's getting punished. Why is he being punished? There's silence on the other end of the phone. He says, tell your son to speak to me when he comes back to the school now. I said that. Because the fact that he had nothing to do with it, what do you want from him? And this happens in schools all the time, by the way, where the teacher punishes the whole class. Why am I responsible because of this guy? This guy misbehaved. Why should I be responsible? What's it got to do with me? The teacher said, well, I have no other way to deal with it. Listen, just because you have a bad solution doesn't mean you should do a bad solution. Why do I have to be a victim because you don't have a better solution? You understand? It's a problem. I don't know what the solution is. He said, well, what should I do? I don't know. I don't know what I should do, but just because I don't know what to do doesn't mean your bad solution is what you should do. And the idea that all the kids in the classroom are responsible for each other is false. What do you mean I'm responsible? I randomly got put in a classroom with this gangster. You, the teacher, can't control him, so what do you expect from me? I've got zero leverage to control him, so why am I being punished? What do you want from me? What's it got to do with me? And it's just a bad solution. It's just a bad teacher. I said, I once had this argument with one of the teachers. I said, the kids have to learn that they're responsible for each other. They share collective responsibility. So I said, I got an idea. If one of the teachers comes late, all teachers should have their pay docked. Their pay, they should dock the pay from all the teachers, because the teachers are all one group. You should dock everybody's pay, right? No. Why not? No answer. Suddenly no answer. Suddenly no collective. I understand. If you want kids to be responsible for each other, kal v'chomer, then adults should be responsible for each other. Well, certainly adults should be responsible. What's the solution? I don't know what the solution is. But just have no solution. A bad solution is not the replacement for no solution. I don't know what the solution is. Think about it. You're getting paid to think about these things. So come up with an idea. That son, ironically, has just become a teacher in a classroom. He just started teaching this year. He's teaching 6th grade. He just started teaching. So we had a long discussion about how to handle kids. So I told him, if one of the kids starts getting cheeky with you, he happens to be a big guy. He's about 6 feet tall, kind of big guy, very sweet, very smiley guy, but he's big. So I told him, if one of the kids starts getting a little cheeky in class, the best thing, never show the kids you're upset. Never show the kids that they've gotten to you. Then you lose. That's because they're trying to rally you. I said, if one of the kids is really getting on your nerves, just look at the kid. Just do like this. Don't say a word. Just stare him down for about 20 seconds. And what's going to happen is the kid's going to just kind of like get real self-conscious, and he'll get back, and that. So it happened the second day. He told me the second day one of the kids started pushing his buttons. So he just turned to the kid like exactly what I thought. Exactly, he just stared him down. He said he melted. He told me, Dad, he melted into his seat. He just dissolved, completely dissolved. I had a friend who was today. He was actually an engineer for McDonnell Douglas. He was designing planes, and he actually came to work for Israel Aircraft. And he was living here in Renana, working for Israel Aircraft. And then McDonnell Douglas, the way he put it, he moved back to America because McDonnell Douglas made him an offer he couldn't refuse. That's how he put it. So he went back. Now this guy was big. He was over 6 feet in 8th grade. And he topped out at about 6'2", and a big, strong guy. For a hobby, when he was working for McDonnell Douglas, as a hobby, on Sundays he taught Talmud Torah. He taught Hebrew school. And Hebrew school is a bunch of restless kids who don't want to really be there. Right? They're not interested in being there. That was his hobby. He enjoyed teaching, and that's what he did as a hobby on Sundays. Okay, so he walks into the classroom, and one of the kids started giving him a hard time. So he didn't say a word. He walked over. These kids, they have that desk-table combination. You have the table and the desk. It's all connected. It's one piece of furniture. So he walks over to this kid's desk, and he takes hold of the 2 front legs of the desk, and he just lifted the desk up in the air, and he stared the kid right in the face, just like this. Didn't say a word the whole time, and he set the desk down. He said, the kid didn't say a word the rest of the year. He didn't breathe for the entire year. Nowadays, you can't do that. You probably get sued nowadays, whatever it is. But I'll tell you, all he did was lift it up and say, this guy also had a sort of face that he could really put on like a really mean-looking face. And I just kind of picked it up like this. And he put it down. He said the kid didn't exist for the rest of the year. So that the idea of collective punishment, is only, even the Torah, you see, that the Torah says there's only collective punishment. You're only responsible for other people if you are in a position where you can do something about it. If you can't do something about it, then the Torah is not going to hold you. That's completely irresponsible. What am I supposed to do? I didn't know you were about to rob a bank. What do you want from me? And therefore, the Torah is telling you it's to the degree that you're capable of having that influence, number one. Number two, did somebody want to ask a question? Yeah, go ahead, Mark.
So what about somehow the effect that a Jewish person that makes Hilul Hashem affects all the Jewish people?
You're asking a question that is something people would rather not think about. But what happens is, what you're bringing up now is something that's frightening. Because if a person does something that triggers off God's wrath, and let's say you did an Avera, a person, not you, a person does an Avera, and as a result of his Avera, there's a lack of siyata dishmaya, of divine assistance. There's a negative force is unleashed, and somebody dies in a tragedy as a result of the fact that this Jew did something wrong, a Chil Hashem, whatever it is. He's not only going to be accountable for the Chil Hashem, he's going to be accountable for murder. And if there's another Jew that then there's another Jew who could have become a Baal Tshuva if there would have been a positive influence in the world, a positive energy. And now there's no, if a Jew learns Torah in Yerushalayim, then a Jew in France who becomes a Baal Tshuva, you get credit for him. Because you brought a certain positive energy, a certain spirit of Kedusha into the world. We have no way of measuring this. The Gemara in Pesachim says there are 7 things nobody knows. The Gemara says there are 7 things that are hidden from man. Nobody knows how he's going to make his parnasa successfully. Right? You try one thing and it didn't work. The field you majored in didn't work, and then you tried another field. Next thing you know, it worked. And nobody knows how you don't know what business deal is going to work. You have one business deal which looks logical flops, and another one where you rolled the dice, and the next thing you know, you made money. Nobody knows how to make parnasa. Nobody knows the gender of an unborn child. Nowadays they have ultrasounds, but without independent of ultrasounds. One of the things nobody knows is what his friend is thinking. Nobody knows what his friend is thinking. And the obvious reason is because if you did, probably wouldn't be your friend. Right? Nobody knows when eventually the day of the deliverance from his troubles, where troubles are going to end. Nobody knows that. And one of the things is nobody knows the depth of God's judgment. what we call omek hadin. The Gemara says nobody knows the depth of judgment because there's such a ripple effect. Because we not only get judged for what we are, we get judged for what we do, we get judged for the ripple effect, the effects of our actions. And those effects of our actions are absolutely infinite. So if a person, for example, Rabbi Schiller started Ohr Somayach, right? Rabbi Schiller Sr. started Ohr Somayach. So he's got a ripple effect because they're already great-grandchildren. They're already original students of Ohr Somayach who have grandchildren who are keeping Torah and mitzvahs. Well, that's all accredited to him. How much and what percentage? That only God knows exactly how it works. But he's got credit in everything that results. So whatever a person does, when you raise children, when your children put on tefillin, the parents get credit for that. But if your children, and you made mistakes in raising your children, and there's a certain resentment towards Judaism, parents are held accountable for that. Why were you so angry with your kids? Why did you make Yiddishkeit so difficult for them? Again, the only one who could determine to what degree and what extent and so on and so forth is God himself. But there is a certain accountability. I was once sitting and eating. My kid comes over. That same kid. He was a good kid. He's about 4 years old. I was eating supper. My wife was putting the other kids to sleep. I'm eating supper. He's about 4 or 5 years old. I'm eating supper. He walks over to me, and he puts his elbows on the table. He's looking at me like this for a couple of minutes. I'm eating by myself, and I'm like, all right, kid, You look at, after a couple, he says, Daddy, do you love to eat? So I'm like, do I love to eat? It's like, well, we don't love to eat. I mean, we eat to strengthen ourselves to be able to serve Hashem. One of these lame, pathetic answers that I gave him. And then as he walked away, I said, okay. And I was happy. Then he went from the philosophical to the practical and went and beat up his sister or something. And then I was thinking to myself, how come he never said to me, Daddy, do you love to learn Mishnayos? Why didn't he say that to me? Why didn't he ever ask me about if I love to learn Mishnayos? The answer is that I probably looked like I had a different level of enthusiasm when I was eating schnitzel than when I'm learning Mishnayos. Well, why should that be? Why should that be? A person, there's certain accountability over here. Kid comes to school, they catch the kid stealing from a kid. They caught a kid, true story, they caught a kid taking money out of another kid's briefcase. So the teacher takes him to the principal. The principal says to the kid, you're in trouble. You know you're in trouble? He says, yeah. So you don't look very worried about it. He says, I'm not. He says, well, I'm going to call your father, don't you? He says, yeah. He says, you don't look very worried about it. He says, I'm not. He says, why not? He says, my father's going to be proud of me. Why would your father be proud of you? He says, listen, my father walks around all day bragging about how much he cheats the IRS. Right? He's going to be proud of me. Right? Now I want to tell you something. His father's not going to be proud. Because in the father's mind, there's a difference between cheating on your taxes from the government, stealing from the government, and taking money out of a briefcase. But in the kid's mind, there isn't. And the father's wrong, because you're not allowed to cheat the government. So the kid doesn't know this, so who did he learn it from? He learned it from his father. There's another kid who was asked to draw pictures of his entire family. And it's a little kid, 6 years old. Draw pictures of your family. So he draws a picture of his mother with his apron. He draws a picture of his sister, she's running. He draws a picture of his brother who's chasing the sister, whatever the case. Then he draws a picture of his father. And he draws a picture of his father. He's got a big Gemara in front of him. And the windows are dark with little stars showing in the windows. And there's a big clock that shows midnight. Right? So that's a kid who sees his image of his father, his impression of his father. Is he learning Torah at midnight? Okay, well, that's what the kid sees. So now that's the example that you set for your kids. You can't go telling your kids what to do. It's like the father sitting with his kid in shul. He says, don't talk in shul. Daven, don't talk, daven. Then the father turns to his friend and he starts talking. So the kid has learned an important lesson. That when you're a father, you get to tell your kid to daven and you talk to your friend in shul. Right? So we're accountable for that. We're accountable. It's frightening. Because the good news is that anything good that happens, if it was because of our influence, so then we get credited for that. But there's an infinite eternal accountability here in all directions. That's what a person has to realize. A person has to know that it's a frightening idea. So yes, and there is a concept that when mitzvahs are done and Torah is done, the world is protected. Torah protects us. You saw that this last Bein Hazmanim, when the yeshivas were on vacation, It was terrible. There was one tragedy in Israel after another. One guy drowned, and another guy got hit by a car. Family that tried to have a mother and two daughters got killed by a bus. And this is because there's less Torah being learned. So there's less protection for the Jewish people. So one person who could have been learning more Torah and didn't, so he shares in the accountability of the lack of protection for the Jewish people. You're talking about, again, you're talking about something that's beyond any sort of human comprehension, how it's measured and to what degree. But that it is measured, that we know. A frightening thought, isn't it? It's a frightening thought. So did I tell you about the guy benching here in Ohr Somayach? Ever tell you about this guy benching? We used to have there used to be an Israeli program here in Ohr Somayach. So I would eat lunch here, and I would come into the lunchroom, and as I would finish, there's a guy, an Israeli guy, who used to come in late. So as I was leaving, he was still finishing his lunch, and he would bench. I was already finished benching, and I was on my way out. I watched this guy bench a couple of times. This guy started singing. He would sit by himself, and he would sing the benching. Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam, and he actually sing it with a tune, with a lot of hand motions. Uf tu gog do poteach et yadech, the Sephardi, the whole chant, and all the thing. And I'm watching this guy. And the first couple of times I watched him, I thought to myself, I'd see him on a regular basis. I thought to myself, the guy's a little over-enthusiastic about advertising his Judaism. The typical Baal Tshuva behavior. That was my first thought. After a while, I started watching this guy. I think to myself, hey, the guy's pretty consistent. I mean, this guy's really benching. And I thought to myself, you know what? Maybe I ought to upgrade my own benching. Instead of looking at him critically, this guy, I don't know, I'm not going to start singing, but maybe I ought to upgrade a little bit. So I went home, and I started putting a little more effort into my benching. And then I come here, I watch this guy, and every day he's with it, singing the whole and then I started upgrading, and one day I decided I'm going to say, I should really approach the guy. I say, thank you, you really inspired me, because my benching improved. So the next day I went, the guy didn't show up. I never saw him again. I'm not making any claims here, but I never saw the guy again. I had no idea who he was, where he went. Eliana, I have no idea. All I know is that he, for whatever my benching was worth, on that upgrade, he shares in whatever that benching. I don't know how much it was worth anything, but if it was worth something, he shares in that upgrade. That's what the Torah is telling you here. Number one. Number two, and this is very much the same theme, by the way, but other Mefarshim say like this: Atem Nitzavim hayom kulchem lifnei Hashem Elokeichem. There's an idea here. We are all standing in front of God. Now, I want you to listen carefully because it's extremely important. In this world, there's a certain hierarchy of importance or stature. For example, if you're in a shul and they're going to give the aliyah, the third aliyah, who gets the third aliyah? The biggest Torah scholar. Who gets various honors? The biggest Torah scholar. There's a Kohen gets certain privileges that others don't have. In this world, we have a system, because we are short-sighted human beings, of how to rank people. We know that he's a bigger Talmid Chacham than he is. He's a bigger Talmid Chacham. That's how we rank them here, so that the society could function. If two people are drowning, or not drowning is a different way of ranking them, but let's say the charity fund, the communal charity fund, only has enough money for one family. There's a communal fund, and we only have enough tzedakah for one family. One man is a Talmid Chacham and the other man is not. The halacha says you give to the Talmid Chacham. Why? Because we have to have a hierarchy, a way of running the society. On the other hand, that's only from a human perspective. In God's eyes, who's bigger? That we have no way of knowing. And that's why it says over here, Atem Nitzavim hayom kulchem lifnei Hashem Elokeichem. You're all standing in front of God. And the proof is that if you took the most ignorant Jew in the world and you told a Torah scholar, an anti-Semite comes up to the Torah scholar and he says to the Torah scholar, kill that simple ignorant Jew or I'll kill you. But what should the halacha be based on a hierarchy? Well, one of them's got to stay alive, so he should kill him so he can stay alive, right? Says the halacha, no. Why? The way the Gemara puts it is, what makes you think your blood is redder than his? I don't understand, but if we were both in shul for an aliyah, you'd give him the aliyah and not him. So why not? The answer is because we don't know ultimately who's bigger. Because the ultimate judgment, it's based on percentages. What percentage of your potential, everybody has a potential, your potential is based on your background, your personality, your abilities, your talents, your life circumstances, based on the entire package, which only God could possibly fathom. Based on that entire percentage package, how much of your potential did you fulfill? You fulfilled 96% of your potential, and the bigger Torah scholar fulfilled 95% of his potential. You occupy a front row seat. You're ahead of him in the world of truth. Because you can't be blamed for being born under certain circumstances, in a certain place, with certain conditions. That's not you. Nothing I can do about that. Nothing I can do about that. What we have to do is take whatever we've been given and maximize our potential. That's our job in life. And therefore it says, "Atem nitzavim in front of God, you're all standing together. Because only God knows who ranks where, because only God could possibly know. Number 3, kulchem means, let me ask you a question. How many acts of chesed did you do in this last year? How many times did you daven this last year? How many times did you put on tefillin this last year? How much tzedakah did you give this last year? Not what if you could answer any of those questions. You know why? Because we forget. I don't know, How many times did you get up? Weren't you on a bus and you got up and gave up your seat for a little old man? Didn't that happen to you? That's a chesed. How many times did you do that this year? How many times? I don't know. It's not competition. Not only is it not competition, you can't possibly remember, even if you tried to remember. You can't remember. We can't remember. Atem nitzavim hayom kulchem. All of you, every one of you individuals, all of you is standing before Hashem your God. On Rosh Hashanah, all of you means all of what you've done in this past year, what every single one of us as an individual, all of what we've done this past year is in front of God because God sees. We don't. I don't remember. I couldn't even tell you how many times I davened mincha this year. It's not that difficult a calculation. All I got to do is calculate how many days were in the year, how many times I davened mincha. So I can't calculate. But God could. And I can't remember how many brachas I made, how many times I benched, because I don't remember how many times I ate this year. Well, it should be a simple calculation. I'll count how many days there is, how many I had 6 meals a day. Right, I 12 on Shabbos, right? And so I should be able to, I have no idea how much tzedakah did I give this year. I don't know. I was at the kotel. I gave a shekel here. I gave a shekel there. And also next thing you know, you got it. Wow, the Gemara says all those little coins add up into a suit of armor for a person. Remember in the old days, a suit of armor. They had these suits of armor that are flexible. There are 2 types of suit of armor. There's one that's real, like just full metal, like the guys who are on the horse jousting. Then you got, for the soldiers, they got like a suit of armor. It looks like a fish's scales. Chain metal. What's it called? Chain metal. Yeah. Well, the Gemara says that the coins that you give to tzedakah provide you with a chain metal suit of armor, which obviously means it's a way of indicating that tzedakah that we give is a form of protection for us. How much tzedakah did you give? Just the throwaway money. I'm not even talking about the big money. This is throwaway money that you gave. I don't know how much I gave. The guy comes around with the pushkin shul every day. You throw in a coin here, a coin there. You're all standing in front of Hashem, your God. Number 3. Number 4 is that the commentaries say, based on Lifnei Hashem Elokeichem, Rav Shach Zatzal says, there's a natural human need or understanding or inclination to eat. Every human being has an inclination to eat. The same way that it's natural when you're hungry that you eat or that you want to eat, it is just as natural, Lifnei Hashem Elokeichem, that you're aware there's a God. Every human being by nature knows there's a God. You got to work pretty hard to figure out how there isn't a God. And if you don't know there's a God, so they come up with all these ideas. Now again, I'm a layman. I never studied because I never had the patience to go into all this nonsense. But something as simple as the Big Bang. right? The Big Bang. Something exploded and the world ended up in a perfect order, right? That's like, now if I said to you, yes, a hand grenade went off and it turned into, the explosion produced a bus stop over here with the bench and everything else. Yeah, how did it happen? Listen, it happened. Let's say there was a big grenade, a ton of TNT went off, and it exploded and produced a bus stop. I think not, right? Well, what's more complex, the world or a bus stop, right? Remember, bus stops are part of the world, right? So there was a big bang, something exploded into a perfect order. Are you mad? Honestly. And all you need to do, you need to see nothing less than my grandchildren coming over for a Shabbos, right? The house has never, in all the times that they've been over, the house has never ended up in a better order when my grandchildren have been over than when it started, right? When my grandchildren finish with the house on a Motzei Shabbos, the house basically looks like what Europe looked like towards the end of World War II, right? That's what it never actually looks like a well-organized library. Can you believe it? Right? The Lego that they played with never somehow ended up as a perfect model of the Empire State Building by the end of Shabbos. Somehow it looks like a booby trap, just a booby trap minefield, right? So you can't imagine that there's a God. All you got to do is take a piece of fruit. You got an apple. Every piece of fruit comes along with a free coupon inside. How do you like that? Almost like Cracker Jacks. Remember Cracker Jacks? Oh, they're toy surprise inside. Right, so you buy a box of Cracker Jacks. I didn't even like the Cracker Jacks. They didn't taste that good. But that toy surprise, which is worth less than a penny, for that we'll fight and we'll kill. Right. So you get a piece of fruit, and in a piece of fruit you got a free coupon. Just plant it. You got more fruit. You mean it happened by accident? It happened by accident. It happened by accident. And then they got this nonsense about the survival of the fittest. Boy, I never bought that one. Survival of the fittest. So you had fish that turned into birds. And something like that happened? Don't they say fish turned into birds? So what was happening while they were sprouting wings? I mean, the wings didn't grow overnight. So that means that some of the fish were swimming around with these heavy, useless addages to their body, which makes them the unfittest to survive because they go slower, not faster. Yet somehow they turned into birds. It's like you got to. The Torah say, "What, are you out of your mind?" All you got to do is look around. Anywhere you look and you see God in the world. Lifnei Hashem Elokecha. Okay, don't get me started. I tell you, I was in Yeshiva High School. I raised modern Orthodox. We're taught Bereshis, Hashem created the world, this, that, all about creation. Okay, so when we were in high school, they were teaching evolution. In the biology, in a religious high school, they're teaching evolution. So in high school, certainly was. I was all confused about. I just remember white buttons and black buttons, and they're showing us percentages and numbers and monkeys, and there are pictures of man. Some guy who looks like he's got arthritis who has really turned into a gorilla, or a gorilla turned. All these pictures of man, the development of man. So it wasn't important enough for me to do any investigating in high school. Okay, whatever. I did remember thinking, when exactly during the 6 days of creation did all this take place? That I remember, and I never bothered asking anybody to reconcile for me. I was in a college class when I was about 20, so I was taking a college biology class, 21. And in a room full of 200, a lecture hall, the guy's talking about evolution again. I hadn't heard about it in a few years. He's talking about evolution again. And by this time, I think to myself, he's talking about, the gorillas and and all of a sudden it dawned on me, I say, ooh. And finally, the coin dropped. I thought to myself, hey, these people don't believe in creation. It was the first time that even crossed my mind that there's somebody in the world who doesn't believe in creation. And I was like, ooh, I'm looking around the room. I'm the only guy around 200 people who is like, wait, no, this is not true. None of this is true. This is false. Not it's all false. So the Torah is telling you, if there's somebody, all you got to do is look around. It doesn't take that much. It's pretty natural to know there's a God. That's what the Torah is telling you. Okay, take a look at Pasuk Tes Zayin. So the Torah talks about before Tes Zayin, sorry, Pasuk Yud Gimel, and this is also a point that I'm sure many people wonder about. The Torah says Pasuk Yud Gimel says 8 lines from the top. V'lo itchem levadchem anochi koreses abrisa zos. Not with you alone am I making this covenant. V'sa ola azos. Ki es asher yeshno po imanu omed hayom lifnei Hashem lokedu. Those who are here before Hashem our God. V'es asher einenu po imanu hayom. And this covenant is binding on those who are not here today. So we have a tradition that all of our neshamas were at Har Sinai. So I've been asked, and it's a valid question. There are answers, obviously. Why am I bound by a commitment that was made by my ancestors a couple of thousand years ago? Nobody asked me. I was born, and the next thing you know, I can't eat a Baby Ruth bar because it's not kosher. Whoa. Sorry, no cartoons on Saturday for you. You know what kind of cartoons I missed growing up because of Shabbos? Whoa. Who asked me? Nobody asked me about this. Why am I bound by something a covenant they made 2,000 years ago? Why nobody asked me? And the Mishnah in Pirkei Avos says clearly, Al korchacha no lot, Al korchacha atachai. You live against your will. You're born against your will. Live against your will. As a Jew, it's like sitting around a card table. Are you in on this hand or you're not? No, I'm out. I'm out on this one. Deal me in, deal me out. I'm out. In Torah, there's no deal me out over here. You're in. Yeah, but I didn't ask to be in, and I don't want to be in. I heard, but you're in. Here you go. Well, these are lousy cards, Well, there's shotness over here, and there's no pork over here. That's a lousy set. Sorry, you're in. But I didn't. Where's my choice? Good question, isn't it? It's an interesting question. The answer is, and the basic answer is, well, the Torah said so. That's always a good answer. That's always a good answer. Hashem said so, therefore it is. That always works, right? Like my older son, the first time he was doing something. I don't know, he was about 3-4 years old, and I looked at him. I said to him, "Do you want a patch?" I forgot what he said. I just said, "Do you want a patch?" I had no intent to patch him anyway, but I just said, "Do you want a patch?" And he looked at me and said, "You can't patch me." I said, "Why not?" He said, "Hashem doesn't let." Oh, that you learned. All of a sudden, it invokes the Almighty. That'll take care of it. Okay. That's always an answer because Hashem said so. But if you need an answer, I could show you that even nowadays this applies. Because when one country, if one president makes an agreement with another country, everybody's bound by it. And even if that administration no longer is around, the next administration, you can't just go breaking agreements. That's how wars begin. We're bound by the agreement that was signed by our administration until there's a joint decision to go back on it. So if people could be bound by something that's done by human beings, you're bound by a decision that was made. In America, there's certain laws that were enacted 100 years ago in America. We're all bound by those laws. Well, if you're bound by those laws, so you're saying, what's any different than being bound by laws of a Torah from 2,000 years ago? So I remember there were a couple of guys who were playing Risk. My brother's friends were playing Risk. Yes, Risk's a good game, right? They're playing Risk. So 2 of the guys made a treaty so they could go after the third guy. Right, which always happened when we played Risk. We used to play Risk. We used to play Risk on Shabbos. We'd get 8 guys. We had 4 teams. With two guys, I had a guy I played with, and one guy spinning. And the whole game, guys would be yelling, "You don't know how to spin!" One partner would be yelling, "Give me the dice! You don't know how to spin!" And all these. Okay, so these guys are playing, and 2 guys made a treaty. They're going after the third guy, and so Reuven and Shimon decided they're going after Levi, and all of a sudden, Reuven starts attacking Shimon, the guy he made a treaty with. He's looking around and says, "I'm going to attack you." He said, "1 second, we made a treaty." So he said, "World War II was started with a broken treaty. Spin the dice." You don't want to abide by the agreement. That's how wars start. That's how revolutions start. But in America, in any country, one generation is bound by what another generation committed to. So in Torah, we're bound by what the generation committed to. All right.